You are listening to the Hike Files podcast. What's going on? I am your host, Kurt Zitzelman, and in this episode, we've got Decoding the Pennsylvania Public Lands, Don't Pet the Bison, and New Mexico's Bigfoot warning. Stay tuned for all that's coming up. If you're liking the podcast, feel free to subscribe. If you got any questions, comments, or you got a cool story you want to share with me, or if you want to even be on an interview on the podcast, reach out to me at hike.files@gmail.com. I will get back in touch with you. We'll work something out. I will listen to your story. Let me know. But for now, let's jump right into the podcast. So first thing I want to get started with, it seems like a recurring growing issue, but I know this is something that's happened a lot in the past. And in national parks, state parks, any kind of public lands, especially where there's wildlife, big wildlife, it seems like people really want to go pet the animals or go get their selfie with them. And here's why that's really a bad idea. In national parks, state parks, any national forests, anything like that, the wild animals are wild. It's easy to believe that because it is a park or a forest and maybe you paid some kind of admittance fee to get in, like you do in national parks, that everything within that area is controlled and sanitized and made safe for your consumption. It's not. And there's real inherent deadly consequence dangers involved in trying to get close to some of these animals. Some of the animals that you wouldn't even expect to attack. Like when I was in Assateague Island National Seashore years ago, they had signs up everywhere. Don't pet the ponies. Don't get close to the ponies. Don't take selfies with the ponies. While I was there for 2 days. And on the first days when I really spent the most time exploring the area, and I was out in this kind of marshy area. There was a little boardwalk that went out. It wasn't really an island. It was just a high spot in the marsh. And there was a lot of people on the bridge watching some ponies that were maybe 50 feet away. And I had walked, 30 feet from the bridge. I walked over the bridge, walked over about 30 feet, and I was there. I had my good camera with me, and I was taking pictures, and I was just kind of crouched down, and I was being quiet, and I was just minding my own business. And as the people left, the ponies got a little bit closer, and there was like one woman on the bridge, and she just kind of turned and looked at me and kind of gave me like that kind of uptick with the head and like her eyebrows, like look behind you. And there was a pony walking right up behind me, and I just stopped. I just kind of froze, and I think because I wasn't moving around, I wasn't up and making noise, it just kind of ignored me and walked by. But I let it get past me, and then I got out of the way. I didn't try to pet it. I didn't try to get my my selfie with it. I got some nice pictures, and that's about it. And then I got out of the area. But yeah, they are wild animals, and you don't know what their reaction to people is going to be. And I think I said this in the last episode, in the first episode, about like black bears. They become accustomed to people. They will then walk up to people. They lose their fear, and that's when bad things happen. And that can happen with any wild animal. So not only with the animals, it seems like a lot of people are going up to these geysers, these steaming hot geysers, and putting their fingers in them. If you've got a stove in your kitchen and the burner is on, you don't touch it because you know it's hot. Geysers are hot. The signs that are up in national parks aren't there to ruin your good time. They're not there to I don't know what people are thinking, telling you what to do. Look, they're telling you it's hot and don't put your hands in there because you're gonna get burned. Because if you put your hands in there, you're gonna get burned. Please don't try to get your selfie with an animal. It's not a zoo. They're not tame, and they can be dangerous. And your interaction with them can be dangerous for you as well as the animal. The last one I'll bring up is, it had to be about 2 months ago. A guy rescued, air quotes, a I think it was a bison calf. If I might be wrong about that. It was in a culvert or something like that, and he went down and got it out. And I don't know if he took it to the rangers or if he told them about it, but they had to go and put the bison down, this old calf. They are one of the animals that once you interfere with their young, they just leave them. Wild animals are fine without us. They know what they're doing. They live in the wild. They don't need our help. And our help can actually be more harmful, even with the best intentions. It's hard sometimes to watch an animal that's in distress, but that's the cycle of life, and we need to let that continue. Okay, on to something a little less preachy, I guess. A lot of times in my videos, I'll be in a certain area. Doesn't matter where. I'll be on a hiking trail, and inevitably the question gets asked, can you camp there? And in Pennsylvania, those regulations are a little bit odd because of the way our public lands are kind of designated. So I'm going to give a kind of a quick decryption of Pennsylvania public lands. Okay, so we're going to break them down. You got the state parks, you got state forests, and you've got state game lands. We'll start with state game lands first. They're starting to change the naming of the game lands to wildlife management units, just because that's what they are. They're big tracts of land, and they are meant for wildlife management. So hunting is allowed and fishing is allowed. Of course, you got to have licenses to do each. There's hiking is allowed, boating is allowed, camping is not allowed. So state game lands, almost everything you're allowed to do except for camp. Very little infrastructure. There might be like a maintenance shed somewhere near the game lands, but usually not. It's usually just a parking lot, a big parking lot with the kiosk on it that says hunt safely, and then you just go off and do your thing. You are really responsible for anything and everything you do. The only time camping is allowed in a state game land is if a long distance trail like the Appalachian Trail goes through. I know that on the Appalachian Trail you are allowed to camp if you're in state game lands, but you've got to stay as close to the trail as possible. That's not the case with all trails, so you got to check what trail goes through what game lands and if camping is available. That's the trickiest part of game lands. Other than that, you go out if you want to hunt, you want to fish, you want to boat, you want to hike, as long as you're not staying overnight, you're good. That's the easiest one. Next, we'll go to state forests. I spend a lot of time in state forests in Pennsylvania, and they're all a little bit different. State forests are broken down into 20 districts, and any state forest land that falls in that district takes on that district's name. So around me, Lackawanna County, Luzerne County, Wyoming County, I forget all the counties that are in there, are all part of the Pinchot State Forest District. So there may be different tract names, and I always just refer to it as the Pinchot State Forest, even though it's the Pinchot State Forest Thornhurst Tract where the Pinchot Trail is, and then there's the Mackinac Tract, and then there's the Harvey's Lake Tract or Harvey's Creek Tract. There's a lot of different little sections of the Pinchot State Forest. Each state forest district has slightly different regulations, so you've got to really check for the state forest you're in. Most of the ones that I've been to allow backcountry, backpacking, primitive camping, anywhere that's not a natural area or a wild area. You can go out, you can camp. As long as you're not planning on staying in the same campsite 2 nights in a row, you're free to camp without a permit. You can get a permit if you want to have a fire during a fire ban. You got to let them know who you are, and they will let you know if they'll allow you to have a fire. And that way, if someone comes out and says, hey, it's a fire ban, you say, I got my permit. And that way you're just kind of covering yourself. State forests can have more of an infrastructure than state game lands. There may be picnic areas, and there's usually a state forest headquarters that you can go into, and you can get maps and information, things like that. Some of the state forests are huge. They're not really broken down into small tracts. You got like one large tract out in the center of the state in the Pennsylvania wilds, where you've got like the elk and the Moshannon state forests, the Sproul state forests. They're huge tracts of land, and there's more state forest land than there is private land. And there's all kinds of trails in those areas. Some state forests are a little bit smaller, and maybe they just have a rail trail and camping's not allowed. So the best thing you can do is go online and go to look up Pennsylvania state forests, find the state forest district that you're going to be in, and find out what the regulations are. And then last up, we got state parks, and wow, we've got now 125 state parks. Pretty decent state park system in PA, and their rules are usually more consistent from park to park. There are some variations. One of the consistent regulations is there's no primitive camping, so you can't just go in, set up wherever you want, and camp. They will throw you out. They usually, if they allow camping, it's almost always online registration for a campsite. You pick your campsite, you pay for it in advance, you get your little tag, you put it in your car, you pull up. There are some walk-in sites, and there's a couple exceptions to that, like Oil Creek State Park, where the Girard Trail goes around. It's a 36-mile backpacking loop. That's one of the few, that may be one of the only backpacking loops that is within a state park, but you can't just camp wherever you want. There's 2 campgrounds on either side of the river, and you have to reserve a site, reserve a spot, and then camp in the designated camping area. You're not allowed just to set up wherever you want. There's usually a really good infrastructure in the state parks. Park offices, swimming areas, playgrounds, picnic areas, campgrounds, well-marked, well-maintained trails. There's usually educational hikes, like group hikes you can sign up for, night hikes, fishing, boating, all kinds of stuff. Again, it varies from park to park. There are some of the older, really small parks that are more like just picnic areas. They might only be like an acre. Some of the parks are huge and have all kinds of things to do. So the general breakdown is state game lands, hunting, hiking, fishing, boating, yes. Camping, no. State forest, hunting, hiking, camping, fishing, all of it, yes. Infrastructure, no. And then state parks are hunting, hiking, camping, boating, fishing, yes. Primitive camping, no. All maintained by the DCNR, but it's 3 different divisions. If you know where you're going and you go online, you can find information for whatever land you're looking to use for whatever reason, and you'll know if you're allowed to do it, if you're not, if you need a permit, if you don't, if you need to register with somebody, if you don't. Speaking of regulations, one of the biggest questions I get asked in the summer, hands down, is about kayaking and permits required. Not hiking, I understand, but it is outdoors related, so we'll talk about it real quick. Registrations, launch permits, and mooring permits are the 3 acceptable things that you can have on your boat in the state of Pennsylvania to use state-owned launches. Now, this does not pertain to things like the Delaware River and I think the Susquehanna River, because there's so many private launches that you don't necessarily have to have the sticker on your boat unless you're at a state-owned launch. So, I think it's $20 or $22 now, and it's a 2-year sticker. There's a DCNR, like state parks sticker, and then there's a fish and boat sticker, which is 2 little stickers. So you either have a big long sticker from DCNR or 2 small ones from fish and boat. They're both valid as launch permits, and that allows you to go to any state-owned launch at a state park, a state forest, state game lands, fish and boat commission, anything like that, to put your boat in the water, and you're fine. The reason for the permits, it's money that goes to that department, either DCNR or to the Fish and Boat Commission. So I get a lot of feedback from people that think it's unfair that you have to have a launch permit, that you have to pay to put your boat in the water. And I get that. I do. You bought the boat. You should be able to use it wherever you want. On the flip side of that, though, so especially like in PA, where we are in the northeast corner, we're really close to New York State. In New York State, you don't need a launch permit. But anywhere that's got a state-owned like water, like launch, you usually pay for either parking, park entrance, or both. When I lived in Florida, there was no registration needed. There was a lot of state-owned, like state parks and state-owned launches that you had to pay for to use. So it was, I think the minimum in Florida was $4. And this is, we're talking 12 years ago. $4 minimum to get into a state park. If you went kayaking 4 times a month, that's $16. At that time, the launch permit in Pennsylvania was, I think, $18. So for $2 more, you're good for 2 years. And in New York, so yeah, you pay for your access to the park or the launch. And then also in some of the areas up there, you have to have a sticker or a verification that you have had your boat steam cleaned to keep aquatic plants off your boat. And that's not free. So you got to pay for the cleaning, and you got to have that paperwork with you. So yeah, in Pennsylvania, whatever it is now, I think it's $20 or $22 for a 2-year launch permit. You don't have to worry about it. You go put your boat in. State parks are free entry in Pennsylvania. No charge to get into a state park in PA. So you're paying for it one way or the other. That's the way I look at it. You're going to pay for that one way or the other, either through park entry or launch permit. So yeah, the difference between the three, the launch permit, the registration, and the mooring permit. Launch permit is simply that you give them some basic information, the color and make of your boat, how long it is, your name. You give them $22. They give you a sticker. You leave. Registration is very similar, but they may ask some additional information. Registration is really meant more for powered boats, but you can do it for a kayak if you have your serial number and some other information that they ask. If your boat gets stolen, they have that information on record. But kayaks are plastic boats usually. Registration is really easy to take off. Either sand it off or just pull that little plate off. So yeah, it's really hard to track down a kayak if it gets stolen. And then a mooring permit is for people who want to store their boats at a state park. I don't know I think Fish and Boat does mooring too. I think they just get a launch permit. Basically, you get a slip by the body of water, a lake or creek or whatever it is that is going through the state park. You can tie your boat up there. You can leave it there for the season. You get a mooring permit. You don't need a launch permit or a registration. And I believe that mooring permit is good if you want to take that boat to other places, but don't hold me to that. I've never had a mooring permit. I don't know how that really works, but I do know it's an option. So as you can see, Pennsylvania has a lot of crazy rules about being outdoors, but it's really not that bad. There's just a lot of information. Quick story about the registrations. When I first bought my kayak that I have now, my current design's Kestrel 120R, I bought the kayak, went right to Lackawanna State Park, went right to the state park office, bought the launch permit, went over to the boat launch that I wanted to use, parked my car, got out, and before I even got around the car to open the back door, a ranger pulled up. I don't see a sticker on your boat. Like, it was on my Jeep. I don't see a sticker on your boat. You got a launch permit? And I kind of reached in the window and I pulled it out. I'm like, all right, just bought it. Just bought the boat. Haven't had a chance to put it on. And she kind of laughed. She's like, oh, sorry, but that's what they do. They look for that stuff. I have seen DCNR Rangers and Fish and Boat Commission wardens, I think they are, for Fish and Boat. I don't think they're rangers. I think they're wardens. Whatever they are, but they have authority. Issue citations. Yeah, in Pennsylvania, that's a valid legal document. They can issue you a ticket. They can arrest you. They've got authority. They got this. They go to the same rangers in Pennsylvania And I know New York, and I'm pretty sure in Florida, I think in most states, rangers go to the same school as their state police. I know in Pennsylvania they do. They've got the same authority, and I've told the story before, and I still, to this day, don't believe I actually saw it happen. I was graduating high school. We got done with graduation. Me and some friends got in my buddy's car, and we were leaving. And we came around a corner. Now, I went to school at Wallenpaupack High School, and Route 507 going from Wallenpaupack down to Newfoundland, where I grew up, really windy. And it rained while we were in graduation. So the roads were wet. We're driving down the road. We come around one of the windy turns, and just as we got around the corner, it just happened. A car coming the other way hit a bear, and it knocked the bear down, knocked him out. It was trying to get up. It was all like concussed. But I mean, black bears are big around here, and luck would have it that right behind that car, a state trooper was coming up. A state trooper got out of his car. He's like, "Stay in your car. Let me check out the situation." Looks at the bear, and in his mind thinks, "This bear is suffering. I got to put it down." Now we're watching this. We're in the car. We're like 2 cars back coming the other way. We're watching this unfold. He's kind of looking, and he looks at the bear, and he looks at the car, and the bear's trying to get up, and he's all groggy. And as he's looking at the bear, like 2 cars behind where the state trooper was, a ranger was coming up the road, a DCNR ranger. Stopped his car. He's getting out of his truck, his Jeep, just as the state trooper is drawing his firearm, puts down the bear. The ranger comes running up as the trooper is pulling the trigger. He's like, "Put down your gun!" And trooper pulls the trigger, turns around, looks at the ranger, says, I put the bear out of his misery. And the ranger's like, "That's not your choice to make. You don't get to decide that. You know, the bear was probably fine. It probably hit his head, and it was probably just concussed. We would have got professionals out here. We've got the people to handle this. The bear would probably have been fine. You just poached a bear. Give me your weapon. Put your hands behind your back. You're under arrest." And arrested the trooper on the spot, right in front of everybody. Craziest thing I ever saw. And I didn't know that was even possible. And it turns out, a ranger actually has more jurisdiction. The same level of authority, but more jurisdiction than a state trooper. And they're technically police. So, yeah, if you don't have a launch permit and a ranger's like, "Here's your ticket," that is a serious ticket. You've got to pay that, and they can actually arrest you if you don't pay it. I don't know that's ever happened, but they could. So I don't want to chance that. Finally, I want to end this one on something kind of funny. So I saw this pop up right after I recorded episode 1, and this just made me laugh. It's good to see things like this with a sense of humor. So, Taos, New Mexico. I'm going to read this. This is from KOAT. I think it's an ABC affiliate in New Mexico. They reported that the Taos County Sheriff's Office has offered safety tips for campers in that area due to a Bigfoot warning. The warning states that the species are coming down from the high country to the Kern River, which this is not a river in New Mexico. So obviously this is a joke. To fish in the Kern River, to hunt for fish and vegetation. And it says, if you happen to see one, here's what they're saying to do. The do's: go about your business, take photos documenting the event. The don'ts: do not run toward or away from Bigfoot. Do not yell. Do not try to feed the Bigfoot. So this was posted on the Taos County Sheriff's social media on the 4th of July weekend, and then they wished everyone a happy, safe, and funny holiday weekend. So that's pretty cool to see the county sheriff's office having a little fun. And but those are good. Like, yeah, don't yell at Bigfoot, and don't try to feed him. That's never a good thing. So I thought that was pretty funny. Yeah. So thanks for listening to the episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you would like to be a part of the episode, reach out to me at hike.files@gmail.com. If you got just a funny story that you want to relay, shoot me an email. I'll talk about it on one of the episodes. And yeah, that's going to do it for this one. Thanks for listening. Talk to you in the next.